And we are live.
Coaches. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, they can't hold a flame against you, ay. Blow the whistle, blow the whistle, ay. Blow the whistle, got the game, it ain't no issue, yeah. Blowing the whistle, I had enough with you, the championship, it is gone. Ain't listen to you, I can't give it to you, cause you don't know what I've been on. This is the Coaches Podcast.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Coaches Podcast. I am your host, as always, guys, Coach Steve. It is another beautiful night here talking fantasy football, guys. We have another fun show for you. We're talking Dynasty right now. It's that time of year. A lot of fun things going around. Free agency's coming up. Combine just happened. It's a great time of year for football. So we have a lot of things to talk about today, so I'm not going to waste any time. Of course, let's introduce our crew for the day. Coach Tyler is back. Coach Tyler, what's going on, brother?
What's up, guys? Glad to be back.
Okay, glad to have you back on. We missed you last week, so glad to have you back on the show. And, of course, guys, we have our guest of the show today. First time on our show here, Seth Keller. What is going on, my friend? How are you today?
I'm feeling fantastic. Like we were joking about before the show, it's been a little while since I've been on the podcast scene again because of family and work and stuff like that. So, like you mentioned, so much exciting stuff going on right now. We're getting free agent news. We're getting combine that just happened. We got, just the full-on rookie experience is happening right now. And that's like the funnest time of the year in Dynasty is that moment because everyone has hope.
Yes.
And not to be like Shawshank, where like hope will make a man go insane. Like this hope will make you go insane also when that guy doesn't hit. But like it is this perfect point where like everybody has that guy and everybody's excited and everybody has you can talk to whatever fan out there and you'll get okay, so listen to me. Here's how this guy can be the guy in 2024 and then go through like 19 different things that have to happen. And you hear it in the voice. He believes it. He believes all 19 of those things are going to happen and this guy's going to be a thing. And that to me that's fun. That's why I love this time of year. And I'm excited to get on and just share that excitement,
Well, we are happy to have you here. So, guys, we have a lot to talk about tonight. So we're going to get through some news real quick. A couple things happened since we last been on the podcast here. A couple minor things, a couple big things. Started us off here. Some cuts over the last couple days. Logan Thomas and Alexander Mattison both will be released at the start of the new year, or it's already happened. Logan Thomas, we know, is a quarterback turned tight end, 30 years old, 32, I think he is. And then Alexander Mattison was, supposed to be the big step up that did not happen in 2023 here. So is there any hope left for these guys in Dynasty right now? Do you expect either one of them to really find a team, or are they potential cuts once we get to rookie draft season? Seth, I'll let you go first since you are our guest.
Logan Thomas, I believe, is cuttable. Like, let's be honest. There's out of the 32 tight ends in the league, let's be honest, about like 20 of them, 20 is a bit much, but there's a lot of them that are cuttable in most leagues, unless you're in a heavy tight end premium one. And then for the most part, you're holding on to that guy. I am that guy, Isaiah Likely. I'm that guy. I'm holding on to him. I got hope. There's 19 different things that need to hit for me, but let's face it, like Logan Thomas, he was fun for a little while, but there's not much there. And Alexander Mattison, I was not on the Alexander Mattison train last year. Glad I wasn't on it because of what happened this past year, at least in terms of fantasy. And he could work his way into another backup role, and that's where he has his most fantasy value. And that's where, it's kind of like Jaylen Warren, right? Like Jaylen Warren, he's that guy. He's the backup guy. He's the pass catcher. Like he gets points because he's in that role. And I feel like there's certain guys, when you take them out of that role, out of that backup role and thrust them into that lead back role, they're just not, they're not able to manage that workload for whatever reason, play calling reasons, explosiveness reason, wear and tear on the body reasons, whatever it is. They're just not able to push through that. And to me, Alexander Mattison is one of those guys. And so if he gets one of these backup spots where he can play behind another bruiser, he's going to be fantasy relevant to a point that I think you can flex him, you can have him in your lineup. He's not going to be worth cutting. Is he going to be worth much in trades? Probably not. But he could be a guy that you can stash on your bench and have be playable from time to time. So that's where I'm at with Madison. It's a little flex-ish type of play if you get lucky.
Yeah, I know I had a lot of shares over the years, and I was like, man, finally it's going to pay off, and obviously it did not. So that's my own fault on that. Tyler, a similar question. You know, are you holding these guys on your team in Dynasty right now?
I would hold on to Alexander Madison if I have him. Just, we look at the running back landscape in terms of free agency and what things are going to open up to be, and you have the attractive names like the Saquons and the Josh Jacobs and the Derrick Henrys. But some team is not going to want to pay what the stars are asking. And that could be a perfect place for Alexander Madison to slot into that backup role and to kind of come into what we knew Alexander Madison as and where his value was, and not try and force him in as a starter. I definitely echo Logan Thomas. I think, if you haven't parted ways with him and his shares yet, now's probably the time to do it. You're just kind of watching the ship burn at this point.
You're just playing the music as the Titanic's going down. But if you can't tell, I never played violin with whatever that was. That's my impression.
Yeah, that's definitely both great takes. Yeah, I mean, Madison's definitely a good hold for right now, just to see where he lands. I don't know if he actually got released now or not. I don't remember if I saw that or not. If he's waiting until the free agency starts. I forget what they said.
I think everything did get released. League start.
Yeah, everything
league started. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
I was wondering, I was like, if he got released and no one's even considered even trying to get him on a 1-year deal right now, that's not a good sign. But hopefully obviously it's the other way. So.
And I just heard earlier today, Russell Wilson is in the same boat of waiting to be released as well, which will be interesting to say the least for him moving forward as well as for the Broncos.
Seth, you're one step ahead of me here. Russell Wilson will be released this offseason here. Obviously, $85 million dead cap hit. One of the worst trades of NFL history can even consider at this point for a player. Especially with the performance that Russell Wilson put on the last few years and the amount of money that the Broncos are going to have to pay for his contract, knowing that he's going to be on a different team. So, tell me, guys, give me an ideal landing spot for Russell and one that's probably more logical. Seth, you can go first.
I mean, all the rumors are Fields to Atlanta, but Russell Wilson to Atlanta could be decent. Russ to the Commanders could be decent. I mean, those are the two that come to mind right away. And I mean, obviously, like the Broncos now need a quarterback too. Like, what are they going to do? So there's question marks all over this one. That'll be really interesting to see what happens, over the next few weeks when free agency opens up, because like, man, I would like him slinging the ball to, Scary Terry. That'd be great. That'd be a good time. Having him throw to Bijan Pitts and Drake London, that would be a good time. But it sounds like Fields might be going to Atlanta. So, who knows what'll happen there. And that's why this is exciting, because as much as DraftKings is putting somebody's, odds at -300 to go someplace, who knows what's going to happen? We could end up with, just about anything.
Yeah, it's a scary world out there for a fantasy quarterback, especially the older ones now. A lot of older ones obviously on the market now. And Tyler, who's a more attractive option now? Is it Russell Wilson after 2 mediocre years, or is it Kirk Cousins coming off a torn Achilles? Like, who's the better option right now out there for fantasy? If you had to go get one of these guys on the cheap right now, which one would you prefer?
I would probably be going after Kirk Cousins, just because I feel like the sentiment around the Vikings and the Vikings locker room is that they want Kirk back. And right now we don't know who wants Russell Wilson. Obviously not Denver. But I think if I'm choosing between the two to go after, I would go Kirk just because there's a little bit more knowledge of who wants him and who's going to go after him. In terms of Russell Wilson, I've seen the Falcons as a possible. I've seen the Steelers as a team that could be in play for that. And I think shaking it up, looking at the top of the draft, the Patriots could be a team that could go after Russ and either take a Marvin Harrison at 3 or a weapon for him, or trade back from there, kind of gain some capital because there's a couple holes. And by a couple, I mean about 20 holes that they need to fill on that team. And so there's a game plan that could be, take the last couple of years of Russ, hopefully throw him out the window, pick him up now, hope he returns to a little bit of what prime Russ was, and then just start to build a team around what he is now, or play the draft game and, hope you end up with your guy at 3.
Yeah, that would be a big play move for the Patriots to do something like that. I mean, it could be also something good for them to obviously have if they do stick a quarterback at 3, let him sit for a year or two, kind of get the game under his belt a little bit. If it's probably May or Daniels, I know the Raiders were a possibility for Russell as well. It's definitely going to be interesting. It would be definitely, if you believe that Russell Wilson can rebound, probably the great time to buy low on the guy before he finds a landing spot, because the mystery out there is, I don't think anyone's saying that if he goes here, he's going to be a stud. So this is a good time to see if you could probably buy low on a guy like Russ right now. So, and then last but not least, Mike Williams re-signs with the Bucks, 2 years, $52 million deal. Is Mike Evans still, in general, just the top 15 wide receiver this season coming up? I think this year. He was amazing this year.
That's limit for 1,000 yards, right? Like,
yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, you're riding him till the wheels fall off. The Bucks are signed on with him now for a decent chunk of change, and the hope is that they bring Baker back. If not, we'll see what they do in terms of free agency, or if they try and make some big play in the draft. Yeah. But we've seen Mike Evans put up his 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns with everyone from Ryan Fitzpatrick to Tom Brady, and so you stick just about anyone back there. As long as Mike Evans is still rolling, he's going to continue to be the same guy that he's been his entire career.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. He's good. Seth, you have something to say?
No, that was just ditto. That's
ditto.
It.
Yes, I like it. Yeah. You should be pretty happy with Mike Evans if you own him in Dynasty right now, because especially if you're contending, obviously, there's a good chance he's going to put him at 1,000 yards this year. So it's pretty hard to go against Mike Evans on doing that, but we'll have to wait and see for sure. So good for Mike Evans to get himself a nice two-year payday. So, all right, enough of the news now, guys. Let's get into the real topic today. Like I said, it's a dynasty season right now. We're talking dynasties. We're talking values. We're talking about players, trying to get a little bit on each player to some extent. We did some rookie wide receivers and the free agent wide receivers last week. So don't listen to the Mike Evans take from last week because it's definitely completely gone now. But this week we got a lot of aging vets, rising stars, primetime players that are kind of, at this point, who knows about them. So let's get into it. The rising stars here. I didn't really have a good category for these guys. These are guys who kind of, they're young. They're still relatively young. Whether or not you believe that they've actually risen to star power yet, people might have said Garrett Wilson has already reached that per se, maybe Chris Olave, but these guys, they flashed a lot this past season at least, and they look they're rising to take that next elite level here. So in this class includes Christian Watson, Garrett Wilson, Romeo Doubs, Chris Olave, Drake London, and George Pickens. Are you guys willing to give up the 102, 103, 104 for any of these rising stars right now? Steph, I'll let you go first on this one.
I'd give it up for 2 guys. And to me, it's you have 2 guys here that are just a cut above everybody else. And that's Wilson and Olave. Everybody else, there's a really sizable tier gap between those two. And even though I like, Christian Watson, if he ever gets his hammies, healthy, like that'd be phenomenal. Romeo Doubs has been great in his role with the pack. London again, Atlanta, no more Arthur Smith, so that's like to the moon. And like Pickens, who knows what's going to happen in Pittsburgh? But to me, Wilson and Olave, those are the 2 guys that in a heartbeat I would trade the 102 for. Maybe not in a heartbeat, but like that would be pretty, 9 times out of 10, pretty consistent. Like I'm going to take one of these two guys almost always. If you're like, hey, I got the, I have the 102, I'm going to give it to you for Wilson. Yeah, I'm going to take Wilson, each time I can there. Same thing with Olave. And honestly, Garrett Wilson is just one of these guys. I so wish the Jets could figure out what they're doing. And to me, Olave actually has more potential right now, at least in terms of fantasy. Let me be clear, because people are going to lose their stuff about this. Like in terms of raw football ability, I think Wilson is the best wide receiver out here. Olave, in terms of fantasy, actually stands to gain a little bit of room. So one of the things that I do is I look at percent of offense, right? So if you look at snap percentage, all well and good. It's how often they're on the field. Great. If you look at like target market share, cool. That gives you like how many targets they got compared to whatever. But you could have a guy that gets, 25% of the target market share, but he's playing on the Bears who are throwing it 20 times. Hooray, you got 5 targets. It doesn't mean a whole lot. Like, yes, it's a great share, but it doesn't mean a whole lot if the actual, like what he's getting out of it isn't great. And so what I do is I look at the percent of offense. I look at all of the snaps that the entire team played and how many times was this guy the focal point. Garrett Wilson comes in the 6th spot with 15.6%. He is right up there with the other elite talents in percent of offense at wide receiver. He doesn't have any more volume to go. It's not like, unless he surpasses Keenan Allen or hits Keenan Allen levels, where Keenan Allen is at, I think it's 17%. If I go back to my other page here, he's at like 17%. There's not a whole lot of space there for him to grow any. So he has to grow by the Jets being better. I live in New York. My best friend is a Jets fan.
God bless them.
Jets, Mets, and Knicks. Like his whole life is just all right. It's gonna be great. Oh, the season started. Oh, you suck again. All right, what next? But he's, there's that constant like hope for the Jets, and they haven't been able to put anything together. So unless Wilson and the team around him, not Wilson, because it's not Wilson getting better. Wilson's literally doing everything possible. It's can that team around him get better to score him more points, to put him in a situation where he doesn't need to get a touchdown because the pass hits the defender in the face and he needs to reach around him at the goal line and make a ridiculous grab in order to get a touchdown. And so for me, Olave, he has a little bit of space to go. He's, again, getting plenty of work. He's at 12.6% of the offense on average throughout the season. He has more space to grow. He comes in like that 16th-ish spot in the top 20. He has more space to go and still has that space to go where if Derek Carr plays better, if the Saints play better, if they get a little bit better, he has more outs. Like if this were a poker hand, you have 2 cards that could hit for his value to go up. Whereas Garrett Wilson, he can only get better if the Jets get better.
That is unfortunately true.
Coach Tyler, I can't bet on I'm sorry. I can't bet on the Jets.
You can't tell, but I am a big Dolphins fan, so the Jets keep sucking. That's quite okay in my books. But not Garrett Wilson. I do like Garrett Wilson in a general sense. But Coach Tyler, how do you feel about this question here? Are you on the same page as Seth?
I'm going to take it a little step different. I think if you were holding either Wilson or Olave, I agree that those are the 2 guys that are a tier above. I think if you have Wilson or Olave and someone's coming at you with 102, you're holding those guys. But if I have 102 and Marvin Harrison is everything that they say he's going to be, and I'm a receiver needy team, I'm just going to hold on to the 102, right? Because like we talked about, Wilson and the Jets don't know what they're doing, right? They don't know what's going on. And I think Aaron Rodgers has 1 more year on the contract. We saw 5 plays, But, I think he has one more year on the contract, and then we'll see what happens, right? They might end up being that quarterback needy team. And Chris Olave, we know what Derek Carr is, and financially they're not really in a position unless they hit a Brock Purdy type pick to get any other quarterback back there that's better than what Derek Carr is doing. So I think if I have the 102, and I might even stretch it, I'd say at least to the 103, I'd still hold. 104, I'd consider it. I'm a big Malik Neighbors guy, big fan of him. So I might take him to challenge one of these guys depending on landing spots. But at this moment, if you've got Wilson or Olave, I hold. If you have the 102 and you're looking for a receiver, I hold. If someone comes at you with the 102 for Romeo Doubs, please take it. They're smoking something crazy.
They would be, yeah. Fortunately, I didn't want to just make a slideshow with just Olave and Wilson, unfortunately. I do agree with you guys. That'd be just too counterproductive for what I was trying to do here. But I agree with you guys. Those are definitely the ones that would be in conversation for the 102. There'd be some talks to have for sure. Whether you want the wide receiver that's been proven or the unproven elite talent that may be coming in. So let's go to the second question here. Whose future is the most cloudy right now? Coach Tyler, I'll let you go first on this one. Whose future you about?
I do think Romeo Doubs. He's been good with the Packers. I'm tempted to say George Pickens. All of my friends know I'm a George Pickens hater. He's a highlight reel, but the highlight reel happens like 3 times a year.
Yep.
But I would say Romeo Doubs, he's just, he slots in well, especially when Christian Watson is dealing with his hammies. Eventually, they're hopefully going to figure it out. If they don't figure it out after this season, then I'm throwing Watson up there because then he just turns into a Will Fuller type player. But Doubs, with a fully healthy receiving core, is competing with Christian Watson. And we saw a good amount of Jaden Reed this year, whether it was through, gadget sweeps or like the Thanksgiving game. He was just having, a fantastic game. They were starting to run the offense through him because he was just murdering that slot position. So I think Doubs, just with the competition around him and the lack of a, cemented number one receiver role, we see Christian Watson, if he's there, he's the one that everyone would say on the field is the wide receiver one. Wilson, obviously. Olave, obviously. London, they got rid of Jonnu Smith, so I guess he's the receiver number one right now. And then Pickens, it depends on if Deontay Johnson's
there.
Get
1,200 yards. Give the guy some credit. With Mason Rudolph and Kenny Pickett, and come on, give him a little credit.
Yeah, but the bulk of that was 4 games. Let's be real there.
Have a consistent quarterback this year. Maybe things will change. Deontay Johnson is hurting himself by not catching balls ever for some reason. So there might be a new number one in the works now. So
yeah, but I'd have to go with the cloudiest. I'd have to go Doubs. Just the lack of, I wouldn't say a defined role, but the lack of that number one role, especially with the somewhat emergence of Jaden Reed in his rookie season.
I respect it. Seth, how do you feel about this question here? Who do you feel is the most cloudiest for you?
Yeah, and as much as I really like Romeo, I really want to second what Tyler was saying there. If you look at how much of the offense ran through different wide receivers in Green Bay, Jaden Reed actually surpasses everybody else in Green Bay.
Sure.
And so that alone is enough to raise questions, but also Watson was better than Doubs also. So if you're thinking about it, Doubs is going from kind of this tweener 1A, 1B type of situation because of injuries, and is, if what we're seeing through the course of last year plays out into this coming year, he kind of slots into as a wide receiver 3, which that's not what you're hoping for with a rising star here. But I'm just going to double down with London and Pickens here also. The quarterback issues in those two places, to me, bring about the bigger concerns. And, if Fields goes to Atlanta, most people are going to be like, yeah, it's going to be awesome. But you got to figure too, Fields threw the ball an astonishingly low number of times every time. Like it's not even like just last year. It's like forever he doesn't throw the ball a ton. And so, you want to bump up guys like London for, a good move, definitely an upgrade at quarterback. But are we going to get much fantasy production out of that team? I don't know. Right. And with Pickens, depending on which smoke signals you're reading from different reporters and whatnot, it sounds like Pittsburgh's happy with Kenny Pickett, which, I mean, I guess the devil is better than the one you don't. So yeah, maybe, sure, let's go Pickett. But if that's the case, like, where's the confidence in Pickens? Like, there's not any there. And if they do bring in somebody new, are we just going to gamble on the newness? And to me, that's both of those situations are just so bad that are really so clouded the future. That's why I'm going with London and Pickens, because Dobbs, he's at least going to be involved, right? And if Reed gets hurt, or if Watson still has issues with his hamstrings, like, he's going to get work and he's going to be just fine. Whereas London and Pickens, much higher ceiling, but who's going to provide that to them? And that's what makes it real concerning to me.
No, I think you guys made a lot of good picks there. Obviously, I personally would throw in Christian Watson still. He has shown in small batches that he can be like a true wide receiver one for a team, a big downfield threat. But him being off the field as consistent as he is, it hurts development. I mean, you have all these young players in this Packers offense coming in and working with Jordan Love and building something here that if he's not going to stay on the field long enough, these other wide receivers are going to take their chances there and they're going to succeed. We saw growth from Romeo Doubs, even though, there's still questions. Jalen Reed, obviously, is a big step up. The tight ends both made a big impact as rookies. And then you don't have an elite run game, and eventually you'll find that at some point, whether if Aaron Jones or someone else will be there. So, again, I think the Packers guys, there's definitely some cloudiness to their future, not in terms of they're going to just disappear or anything like that, but whether or not they're going to be able to step up and actually be high-end, consistent wide receiver twos for fantasy right now. So, all right, over the next slide here, we start with the veterans, aging veterans. These are like the star names, the big name players. Obviously, they're all getting up there in age. They're all pretty much, I believe, over 30 years old, if I'm not mistaken at this point. I think Tyreek will be 30 this year. Everyone I think this is over 30 here. So are you giving up a mid-first round pick for any of these guys now if you're not contending, because obviously you would be obviously in the back end. But if think you're one or two players away right now and you don't want to go with the rookie, do you give up a mid-first round pick, the 107, 106 for one of these wide receivers, if any?
I mean, when I first saw this slide, I was like, is that a typo? This should be aged stars, right? Because they've all hit that age mark. I think the only one in here I would consider a mid-first for is probably Tyreek Hill. And that's, yes, he's hitting that 30 mark, but he doesn't show any signs of slowing down, and that Miami offense just looks like it's going to keep churning. He's the only one I would even consider that kind of mid first for. But most of these guys, I'm looking to flip one of these guys and a pick for some other guy on the upward trajectory and see if I can build my roster that way, versus trying, even if I am a competing team, or if I'm in a 12-team league and I finished the last of the playoff teams, I'm getting the 1-6, 1-7 pick, whatever, right? 1-7, right? Like I would want to try and move one of these guys for another pick, and a young guy, and go that route. I just don't. I don't want to invest in any of these guys, because you're not only paying for an older person, but you also have to pay, most of the time, you have to pay an emotional tax here, because like I've had Keenan Allen on my roster for 5 years. He's been elite for 5 years. And it's like, well, I'm paying for this coming year. I don't want to pay that emotional tax. And it's like, well, as seller, I can't sell him for less than this primo price because I'm now emotionally attached to him. And to me, I think you're going to run into that with all of these guys is just this emotional connection that's going to make it so that like you have to overpay for them. And at that point, like it's just not going to be worth it. If you can get them, almost as like an add-in into another deal, like you're trying to move a running back and your running back's a little bit better than theirs. You can get like a tier down in running back, but get one of these guys to pair with them. Maybe you can get something like that going, but I wouldn't try and make any of these guys a focus of a trade at this point.
I like that. Coach Tyler, how do you feel about this?
Yeah, definitely just Tyreek for me too. That was the name that stuck out. I feel like not necessarily questions about the talent, but just questions about some things going on around all these guys outside of Tyreek, right? D-Hop, I'm not even going to say anything about D-Hop. Devontae, is it going to be Aiden O'Connell? Are they going to draft a quarterback? Are they going to sign a quarterback? What's going on with his quarterback situation? We've seen him perform with Aiden O'Connell and some scraps, but does that continue? Can teams guard against that? Stephon Diggs, we just saw the collapse at the end of the season. No one really knew what caused it, and no one knows if it's going to continue. But, you don't want to be on the wrong side of that trade, especially after the collapse. Keenan Allen, elite, old man, and he's getting a run-heavy coach coming in, right? We don't know what the offense is going to look like and if he's going to reprise that role as the elite number one. And, he always seems to get banged up for at least a couple games. Cooper Kupp, the emergence of Puka Nacua, it eats into what Cooper Kupp is, right? There was not a lot. Most of the passing game worked through Cooper Kupp, and then Puka comes out and just dominates in his rookie season. Is it still going to be Puka and Kupp trying to share those wide receiver 1 weeks? Is that going to be Kupp starting to sort of see himself not phased out, but start to show the edge a little bit? And Amari Cooper, just quarterback questions. Does D-Walk come back healthy, and is he, going to be good again? He didn't look all that great last year. He hasn't looked all that great since he's been back on the field. They're going to bring back Joe Flacco and just figure out how to let Watson ride out his contract on the bench. But Tyreek Hill, he's got a certain role that we know about. He's got an offense and a quarterback and a coach, and most importantly, he's still got that speed, and that hasn't left him at all. And so the only one I would even think about buying into with a mid-first is Tyreek.
I knew I liked you guys. Tyreek is obviously the easiest answer here. Obviously, no one else seems to have that still elite upside that you think of after this coming season here. Everyone is has a lot of question marks, like you guys said. Who do you think will completely fall off this year? It's more of a prediction, I guess. Who do you think falls off completely? At the end of 2024, who's someone is like, man, he's done. He's an Allen Robinson, I don't say Bob Woods, but Allen Robinson type of guy who's just completely just done now. Tyler, give me a guy. Who's the one guy who's just done after this year?
As a Texans fan, please say Bob Woods, because I was very disappointed in that signing at the end of the season. But as a Texans fan who has seen a lot of his career, I'm also going to say D-Hop. He's started to kind of show that age, and he's just kind of bouncing around teams. And I feel like it's just starting to, if it hasn't been the beginning, we're starting to see the beginning of the end for him in his career. Illustrious career, fantastic receiver, but I wouldn't want to hold on to him for fantasy purposes outside of that. emotional tax of, watching him beat the Cowboys in overtime when I was a freshman in college.
I like it. Seth, how do you feel about this?
That's just not even fun. Like, did you see my water bottle?
That's unfortunate.
Wow, what a shot. But I mean, you might like my Texans take later on. But anyways, for me, I think it's going to be really interesting. But I want it. I think the person that scares me the most of the cliff, and that is like, if the cliff came, he would cause the most damage to basically everyone out there. Aside from Tyreek Hill, because we already mentioned we all love him, and if that cliff came, that'd be bad. But to me, it's Cooper Kupp, and he's had back-to-back seasons now where he's missed about half to more than a quarter of the season. It's the emergence of Puka Nacua now. He's in that 30-yard range, in that plus 30 age group. And, a few years ago, I did a little bit of digging around that 30-year kind of age cut. And the receivers that did things after 30 were all elite talents. Like, it's not like Joe Schmo hit 31 and was able to post a worthwhile fantasy number. It was like, these are guys that have been elite the whole time, and that's why they have decent numbers in their 30 age. So all of these guys, I think, can do that type of work. But for me, the big question mark is, does Kupp get all the way back to healthy? And if he does get all the way back to healthy, what does the route combinations look like for Kupp and Puka Nacua? Because they both run really similar routes, and they both run them really, really well. And so who's going to get the call on those routes? And who else is going to be on the field to be able to open things up? And I feel like that's where, who knows what the coaching and GM staff is going to do to be able to set up their young stud with Nacua, or are they going to keep that veteran with Kupp, trying to get him mixed in, or are they going to try and move on? And that, to me, that's where it's like, I want to get off of the Cooper Kupp train now while there's still people that believe in it, more so than anybody else, because I feel like Kupp still has that height to the cliff. Whereas, like, Hopkins, if I fall off that cliff, it's like falling off the step stool, versus if I fall off Kupp, it's like, I was like cleaning the gutters on the third story. I'm falling off of that. That's a much, much higher cliff for me to fall off of. And from a dynasty perspective, a lot more difficult to climb out of, especially if I'm trading assets to get those guys at this point.
Yeah, no, that was going to be also my pick as well. The way I look at it is that if you look at all these guys here, can you arguably say that they're the wide receiver one on their team? Pretty much everyone. But then you get the Cooper Kupp, it's like he was a couple years ago for sure. Mm-hmm. But Puka there now, is he the true wide receiver one even when healthy? I don't know. He might be. He might not be. Everyone else, I can't argue that they're not. Yeah. So with Cooper Kupp, like if his value is as high as it still is, it's probably steady. I want to sell off, like you said, Seth, and get good value for a guy who has that big name value who, maybe he puts up 700 yards this year. Great. But then after that, you're not going to get anywhere near the value for a guy who's going to be 33 years old or 32, whatever it is. I'd rather take that step there. Everyone else is like, the step isn't as big, and it'd be really shocker if some of these guys completely just fall off anyway. Kupp is the one guy I can see falling off pretty easily. So,
yeah. And one final note on that, we might get this year that magical wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2 combo of Kupp and Nacua, that both of them are just top 10. And like that doesn't happen often, but we could get that magical moment in this year. But even with that, that's like, yeah, I'm selling Kupp in season. Like, I don't want to sell him right now when players' value is diminished because everybody right now is talking picks. I want to sell him in season when people have seen a couple of weeks out of him. Hopefully they're good weeks. And even if they finish out the season when, the two of them are just tearing things up, I'm still going to be on the right side of that eventual decline for Kupp. And that's my goal, is to be on that side of the curve for really any of these trades. I want to be on the side where we're still kind of up, not we're down.
I like it. All right, over to the next aging vets, the 28 to 29-year-olds. These are the guys who are like obviously not over 30. They also have some more name value. Whether or not you believe in their name value still, they're more commonly known, obviously, within the league here. Yeah, the Deebo Samuels, the Chris Godwin, Deontay Johnson, Jacoby Myers, Juju, Zay Jones, Cortland Sutton, Terry McLaurin, and Christian Kirk here. Is there one to own on this list? There's someone of these groupings here you want to go after, whether it's because you believe there's a season ahead of them that's going to be great, or if you think you could buy low on them for good value, kind of mixing question 1 and 2 together here. Who's the one guy on this list you guys kind of want to own?
I would have to go, Terry McLaurin. The consistency of Terry is definitely attractive. We just got done talking about Mike Evans and how he was consistent with bad quarterback play. Now, all the talk is Washington's at 2, and they're looking at Drake May. They're looking at Jaden Daniels. They could trade out of the pick and go get someone if they needed to. They could go sign a Russell Wilson. They've got all the avenues to get anyone back there that can hopefully throw the ball consistently. And, it is Washington. They're probably going to find a way to draft like Joe Alt at number 2 and just not look back.
You're Sam Howell.
But I think Terry, just his consistency under as awful as things have been in Washington in terms of, quarterback play as a whole and coaching and everything that just happened with the franchise. He's just in the worst spot possible to succeed. And he's still being consistent even at, going into this aging vet part of his career. So I think if I'm buying anyone, if there's anyone to own on the list, I'm going Terry, just with the promise of if he does what he's been doing, I'm going to be all right. And if he does anything better than what he's doing, I'm going to be ecstatic about it.
I like it. Seth, what do you feel on this pick here?
Yeah, I mean, I like the McLaurin pick too, because even if we get like a Bryce Young to the Panthers situation with the Commanders this year, Terry McLaurin has a potential out in 2025. So you might have to kind of eat the investment for a year, but then he might get one more shot with a better team in his kind of last 30, age year before you're trying to sell stuff off. So I like that idea. I'm a Chris Godwin guy. I remember he was like one of the first guys that I full on scouted, did the combine thing. And I remember watching him in the combine and it was like, this guy's going to be good. If you're not if you watched anything, Godwin's going to be a good guy. So I have an emotional text with Godwin. I like his opportunity there. But most of these guys are really like a pick your poison guy and a send out low ball offers and see what you get back. Like if somebody's low on Deebo, would I want Deebo on my team? Sure, if I can get him for a reasonable price, because who knows what you're going to get out of a guy like Deebo. Can he get back to what he was a couple of years ago when he was, catching the ball, running the ball, like yak yards out of control? Maybe, right? The emergence of IU kind of put a little bit of a damper on that. But if you're getting them at a discount, awesome. And to me, all of these guys are bargain bin type of guys. Even like Jacoby Myers. In one of my leagues, I got Jacoby Myers we did like a free agent draft because we expanded out the rosters an extra spot. So it was like, all right, nobody touched free agents for a while. And we just did a free agent draft of like 2 picks. And so I got Jacoby Myers in that and was like, this is awesome. Like he's another one of those guys that just is a target absorber, right? He just is a guy that just eats up those targets. Yes, he had a touchdown issues early on in his career, which may have been on the Patriots more so than him, but he was just one of the guys. And that's another one. Like, yeah, get one of these guys. If you can get them for a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick, something like that, like start sending out those low ball offers to everybody in here. Not too low that you burn bridges with the owner, but like throw out something that's a few bits behind, and especially now when people are excited for picks, and if you're in one of those leagues where you need to trim down your roster pre-draft, which I actually am in one of those leagues, and I kind of like it more than like I drafted everybody. I have 500 players on my team. I kind of like cutting it down and then doing the draft. But like this is a great opportunity to send out some just not so terrible you're gonna get mocked on Twitter or something like that, but like bad enough where if they accept it, you feel like you stole something.
Right. No, I like that. Yeah. I mean, this is a great group here that if maybe someone who's rebuilding has some of these guys on here, you want to throw out some, 2023 rookies who, you don't like, you don't think they're going to pan out. People might want to buy into that and get rid of some of these aging vets off their team. A guy I really like to buy in still is Christian Kirk. We don't know what's going on with Calvin Ridley yet, or if he's going to be back with the Jaguars or not. He's obviously not going to resign. Maybe he might, but he look like he's not going to resign by the time the start of free agency starts here. Kirk last year, he was not as good as he was the year before. Obviously, Calvin Ridley came in, took a lot of targets away, but he was still on pace to have almost over 1,100 yards before his injury. This Jags team obviously has to reinvent themselves this offseason, kind of get back to the passing game. Trevor Lawrence needs to step up. He's going to be going into his fifth year after this year. He's going to want that contract. He's going to need to step up in this offense here. And Kirk has been good the last year and a half with the Jags so far. And if you can get him on the cheap right now, I think this Jags team can rebound. I think they're going to try to get the ball out of Travis Etienne's hand on the ground as much, and maybe try to get the passing game going a little bit more this year. So Kirk's a great guy to buy low on right now.
Yep. Love that, especially because Lawrence did have a pretty good dip last year in his performance. So you can use that and snowball that into a really hopeful, bargain purchase here with Kirk. Love that idea.
Yes. All right. And then the last of these, again, this is going to be a quick one, but the aging vets over 30 who are basically past their prime at this point, the guys who we talked about 2 slides ago that might end up here next year when we talk about these same situations. But the Devontae Parkers, the Michael Thomas, the Tyler Lockett, Allen Robinson, Mike Williams, Brandon Cooks, Bob Woods, the 34-year-old Adam Thielen who had 1,000 yards. Is there anything left in any of these wide receivers you'd still want on your team if you could buy low on them?
I might buy into Tyler Lockett of any of them. I am also a big JSN believer. And he started to chew into some work and get some more play towards the end of the season. And that was kind of once JSN stock goes up, Tyler Lockett immediately goes down. And I think that if there is anyone on this list that I would even throw anything at, it would be Tyler Lockett. It would be one of those, very low ball offers. I don't want anyone in the 4th round of my rookie draft. Give me Tyler Lockett. You have fun, hoping the 27th running back off the board pans out. But of that's about all that I see. Everyone else is either always hurt, non-existent, or Brandon Cooks. He just kind of
probably doesn't belong in this spot, but
yeah.
There's no else I could have put him. This was it. This was the only spot I could put Brandon Cooks.
I thought you were going to take shots at the Cowboys again there. I was like, don't do it.
No. I'll respect it.
I might have saved Tyler from saying that.
I'll respect it. No, but yeah. I think if I was to throw something at the wall and hope it sticks, the only one I'd throw is Tyler Lockett, but it'd be, as cheap as I could pay for anyone in fantasy.
Yeah, and I would do that with Brandon Cooks, Cowboys fandom aside. He did have a pretty decent season last year. He put up 170 PPR points, which is not hitting that upper echelon. He's way below CeeDee Lamb, who hit 400, I think, PPR points, depending on scoring. But enough of a factor in that Cowboys offense, and the Cowboys. They love to throw as much as I lose my mind watching them play at times where it's like, just dear God, run the ball. They love throwing it. And so if there's a team that's going to get one of these guys involved, it's the Cowboys and Cooks. I think if if he stays with the Cowboys, he has another good shot of being a decent flex play from game to game. It'll be difficult to tell when he's going to get his pop. I like the idea of, dynasty best ball, throw him in, something like that. And then not that I would make an effort for him, but if I have him on my team, it's like, all right, let's keep it rolling. Is Adam Thielen, the fact that he's still putting up 1,000-yard seasons, like, I don't know where I'm going to find space for him in the lineup. Like I know initially I'm looking at my roster and it's like I'm not penciling him into a starting position, but as the season goes on and he's just still producing, and that young guy that I thought would, like a JSN who I thought would pop right in and is not, Adam Thielen kind of moves into that spot if he's good for that 1,000 yards. And what did he have? Something like 80 plus catches, I think it was. I have to check to see how many catches he actually had last year.
I will find that out. He had 103 catches.
100. So he had more than I was even estimating. So 100 receptions and 1,000 yards. Like you can't go wrong with that. And for free. Like at this point, like I said, I'm not trying to trade for him. I'm not advocating that. Please do not hear what I'm saying as me telling you to go out and try and get Adam Thielen. It's if he's on your waiver wire, sure. If he's already on your team, keep him on your team. But most of these guys, as much as I've loved Michael Thomas throughout the years, like, yeah, I think he's spent. There's nothing left there. He's just been hurt forever. Most of these guys are kind of in that position where I'll do whatever I can to get them off my team. If you want to offer me a fourth, fifth, in 5 years from now, I'd be like, okay, yes, let's shake on it. That's a deal. Like I don't need most of these guys on my team.
No, probably not. I mean, to be honest, like at this point of this, like, the way the offseason's going so far, I mean, are the Panthers going to get him? Bryce Young, a wide receiver one? I don't know at this point. It might really be Adam Thielen again. Again, Cooks is definitely a good buy going to year two of a new offense. Obviously, he's going to have more time to understand, get more involved. If Mike Williams gets cut, and you could buy low on him now, and if people injury prone don't want to deal with this guy anymore, he's going to get cut at some point. Again, he's had injuries over his career, but he's still managed to put up decent numbers over the last year or two now. I'd still want to see maybe if he lands in a good situation. I could see him landing in Carolina, probably would be terrible then, but someone like Mike Williams would be a good buy low right now. Yeah. Let's go over to our next slide here. Prime stars under the age, not under 26. I messed that up. Between 26 and 27 here, and Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle will be 26 in November, which seems weird because they feel like they're so young still, but they will be 26 because they came in the league a little older. Quickly rank these wide receivers in order. Seth, I'll let you go first on this.
Oh, man. So the way I'm thinking of this is I'm trying to maximize kind of youth and production at the same time, which is weird because it really does feel like some of these guys are younger than the others and they're right in that same range. But for me, I have Waddle near the top along with probably Brown, Ayuk, Metcalf is how I'm probably looking at it. Devonta Smith is the weirdest one for me because I feel like depending on what's going on, him and AJ Brown just kind of keep moving around to me. And then at the very bottom for me is DJ Moore.
Sure.
Without Fields and without his 3 touchdown game, his average gets skewed. And I know there's a lot of people that are like, well, you want the ceiling of the 3 touchdown gun to affect his average. Not if you're looking at that as if it's typical, though. Like there's like, and this is one of my big pet peeves is you shouldn't be looking solely at mean average fantasy points because fantasy points are not a normal curve. They're very much a skewed curve. And therefore, when the mean is greater than the median, you're getting a skew into that kind of fat tail on the one side, and you're going to be over assuming how many games they're actually hitting at that average mark. We won't go too far down that rabbit hole, but that's my push, and I try and do it all the time. Median points per game gives you a nice look at where that 50% is, and you'll see with guys like DJ Moore, like their median is usually well below their mean because they're having more of their games in that lower band than those massive games that can skew an average. So for me, DJ Moore is at that bottom part of it. But yeah, this to me, I feel like there's so much of personal bias and just like, man, what are we gonna get? What are the Eagles gonna look like next year? Like they had another decent year in terms of record, but like there's a lot of, how are we gonna manage that Eagles team? How are they gonna how are they gonna manage themselves, and what are we gonna get out of them moving forward? And me being a Cowboys fan, I obviously wish nothing but horrible things to them. But from a fantasy perspective, like, they've been great fantasy assets. And so it is tricky to get that 6 kind of nice and neat. But yeah, I'll pass it over now. How did you guys do these 6?
How do you got here? What do you got?
So as a Cowboys hater, I have to put AJ number 1. So
right.
Looking at the slideshow before we started, we only had the first 4, and I feel like
I
those were really
apologize
easy.
if I added these in late last night, I think.
Yeah. So those 4 I felt were easy to rank. Throwing in Smith and Waddle kind of throw some wrenches into that. So I was writing over here as you were talking. But I have AJ Brown, Waddle, Metcalf, Ayuk, Smith, and then Moore. Okay. So AJ, I just feel like he's that elite talent, and as much as Smith has his big pop-off weeks, and as much as AJ goes up and down, his good games and what I think the Eagles will look like next year, I think they'll have to pass the ball more. We had Jason Kelce retirement today. There's been talk all this past season of the tush push getting banned. There wasn't a super solid, legitimate running game outside of Jalen Hurts, and especially in those 1 to 2 yard ranges. But I think they're going to have to throw the ball more. And, some people might look at his fits and, say he doesn't need the ball. But if this team wants to be overly successful, they need to play through AJ Brown. And so Brown first, Waddle, we talked about it with Tyreek Hill, genius coach, Tua at quarterback, and a lot of attention defensively over to Tyreek opens up some things for Waddle. Metcalf, like we talked about with Lockett and JSN, right? One of them's going to be on, one of them's going to be off, but Metcalf's always going to be on. Ayuk, the 49ers are still going to be a run first team as long as Christian McCaffrey is doing his thing. And since he's been in San Francisco, he's been doing his thing. So put Ayuk right there. Smith, better than DJ Moore. We know who his quarterback is, DJ Moore. On a team that doesn't throw the ball and on a team who doesn't know who's going to be throwing the ball the 15 times a game next year when they do.
I like it. My top 3 real quick. Jalen Waddle. I still think there's a back half of his career, kind of like a Tyler Lockett, where there's still the upside he's going to have. You might not see it, with these Tyreek Hill years, but it's going to be there at some point for him. AJ Brown would be next. Still an elite prime player there that is going to continue to be a elite upside kind of guy. Brandon Ayuk comes next to me. I'm a big Brandon Ayuk fan there. I do believe that these aging guys like Kittle and Debo going to give way to allow Brandon Ayuk to shine at some point. I do believe they give him that contract extension at some point, whether it's this offseason or after the season's over. Devonta Smith will come in next to me. I like the Smith's game a lot there. I still think there is upside in his game that he can also have a back half of his career, whether or not that him and Brown are very close in age. DK Metcalf, he's solid. He's a solid guy, but his questions with his future with the quarterback situation and Geno Smith, and if Geno doesn't pan out this year, what do they have after this? And then DJ Moore is just unfortunately just last in that list here. But if you have any of these players, you're for the most part, pretty happy to have them in Dynasty right now. So, all right, over to the next slide here. These are the prime wide receivers under 25 here. Open discussion here. Let's keep out Nico Collins and T. Higgins. Of those four, yeah, we're going to give them their own question here. Rank the top four here. These are probably CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, and Justin Jefferson, for the most part, are probably the top four wide receivers in some sense. But what four in order are they? Tyler, I'll let you go first on this one.
Okay, so I'm going to have to start it. I'm going to have to start it with Justin. He's just the talent. You can't beat it. When he's on, right? I'm going to do what I've seen a lot of people do as they go through their dynasty rankings this offseason and go CeeDee Lamb number 2. I feel like just the tie to Dak, the Cowboys just seem to, dominate bad teams, and somehow they end up with a lot of bad teams on their schedule. And so CeeDee Lamb is going to pop off just about week to week. And even if they play a good team, he still has, what we would consider a very good to elite game. If not, I'm going to have to go Jamar Chase 3. I'm a big Amon-Ra guy. I've got his jersey hanging up in my closet right now. But Jamar Chase, just when he can stay healthy and when Joe can stay healthy, it's a duo that's very hard to stop. It's just one of those throw it up. Jamar's going to find a way to come down with it. And then Amon-Ra at 4, he's, as good of a 4 as you could find. Just his involvement in the offense. Jared Goff obviously trusts him as much as they've added weapons like Montgomery and Gibbs out of the backfield, as they've added Jameson Williams and started to implement him more, as they've got young Sam Laporta, who was a dominant tight end. That was the question behind Amon-Ra, was as things get added, is he still going to be that guy? And he got even better once those things were added and the whole Lions team produced. And so it's really hard for me not to put him up at 3. I think it might even just be the name value of Jamar Chase, but I would go Justin, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar, and then Amon-Ra.
I don't think it's as wild as it was maybe a year and a half ago when we were talking about these guys. But Seth, how do you feel about those top 4? Similar or?
Yeah, I would. So my thing is it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter which one you put in.
It's just for us to talk.
Like get them on your team. To do what you need to do to get them on your team. You want all 4 of them if you can. How
many first round picks are you having to give up for these guys? How many are you willing to give up to get these guys? 2, 3.
That's a very league dependent type of question. Last year I sold Garrett Wilson in one of my favorite leagues for 3 firsts and Dalton Schultz. And I got reamed. I got reamed for making that trade.
Wow.
And I got reamed by the guy that came in last place, and granted, he still wants to crap on me because my playoff performance was terrible, which it was, but I was in the playoffs and you were the last place team. So I feel like all of his arguments are no longer valid. But I think that's a highly league dependent question of how many firsts you would be willing to give up. So my thing is you need to look at what other wide receiver trades have been made throughout your league history, and I would match. You usually have one that's just absolutely astronomical, insane, and probably ruined both teams. But I would go right below that for any of these guys and go right in par with this is historically the most that's been paid for a receiver. I'd pay it for JJ. I'd pay it for Lamb. I'd pay it for Jamar Chase. I don't think you have to pay it just yet for Amon-Ra, but value wise, he would be my 4. But in my heart, he's still right up there with the other as they're all ones, and it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you're splitting hairs to get one to be number 1 and this one's 3 versus 2. I don't care. Get him on your team and pay whatever the historical rate is. I'd be willing to offer that up to get them on my team, especially if I'm, if I'm trying to make a move this year or next year.
I do have a trade that involves a couple of these guys from this past offseason, could give an idea of value and something that you could do. But I held CeeDee Lamb and Stephon Diggs, and I held a first of another league mate, which we're going to talk about in a minute, the Dynasty GM tool. Should definitely use it. Quick early plug. But I looked at the Dynasty GM tool, and I had the pick of one of the two guys that was supposed to be the higher contenders for the number one overall pick. And a guy in my league, it's a big Cowboys fan, I held CeeDee Lamb, and he had Amon-Ra St. Brown and the other pick of those two. So I went and traded CeeDee Lamb and Stephon Diggs for his Amon-Ra St. Brown and that pick, which now ended up being the 101. It was supposed to be, kind of one of those top 3 secured type things. This is a 10-team, 1 QB league. So, that's obviously going to be a Marvin Harrison Jr., which was what I was betting on. But seeing these guys, Amon-Ra might be a little bit harder to pull one of those on now. But seeing these guys and being able to understand, CeeDee Lamb's going to have that breakout year, but I can get almost the same production and still work in something to help my team future-wise, which is going to give me both Amon-Ra St. Brown and now added Marvin Harrison Jr. or Caleb Williams or whatever you're working into.
I like it. Yeah. Get these guys on your team as quick as you can. So I know I traded away T. Higgins, a first and a third for CeeDee Lamb like mid-November. Pretty happy about that. So, so the other two people who I don't know if you want to consider them prime stars, they didn't have a place, unfortunately, in my slideshow here. Maybe they should have been with the Olave and Garrett Wilson. Maybe I could have made another slide off those guys. But Nico Collins and T. Higgins here. Right now, obviously, Collins is coming off an amazing season. T. Higgins seems like he's going back to Cincinnati. He's obviously has a tremendous talent himself. Injured last year, unfortunately. Moving forward, which of these guys would you prefer to have right now? Guy who's going to his last year of his contract, guy who's franchised in the contract deal, maybe again. Seth, which would you prefer in Dynasty?
I mean, I feel like this should be Tyler's question take, and I feel like he should be upset at the fact that Nico Collins is there and not Tank Dell, and really seeing. I mean, to me, like that's the guy that I want. I want Tank Dell and T. Higgins, and then Nico, I think is kind of like maybe not in that order, but like those are I'm more concerned with that play in Houston of, is Collins going to be the standalone one, or is he going to be kind of playing 1A, 1B type of deal? And that's going to be interesting to see, because in the 10 games that they had, Nico Collins and Tank Dell split who had more points, who had more of the offense. Like they were kind of back and forth through that whole time. The injury puts a bit of a damper on Tank Dell, but having a broken bone is anecdotally, I'm not a doctor. I can't give you, official like quantitative medical numbers, but from all the years of watching football and dealing with injuries and stuff like that, if you break a bone, you come back from it without much of a regression, versus like if you tore an ACL or blew your knee out or an Achilles or something like that. So I could see Tank Dell coming in and, pushing for right back to, that argument of, is he the number one wide receiver in Houston? And I'm more interested in that conversation than the Collins Higgins conversation.
That's fair. That is fair. Tyler, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, definitely. Give me either Texans receiver over Higgins. They are the greatest team in the world. CJ Stroud is going to surpass Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady. But all seriousness, I am a guy, I bought into Nico Collins finally having a quarterback and got a lot of shares for him this offseason. And I was very happy with the shares that I bought into, especially that back half of the season. Missed Tank out there, missed watching him route people up. But I think that is the conversation that, you kind of have to have with yourself if you're looking at Houston and you're looking at trading for one of these guys, is which camp do you fall into? Do you believe that Tank is going to be the one? Do you believe that Collins is going to be the one? Do you think there's a definitive one at all? Or they're just going to go 50-50 or trade weeks, whatever it is? I believe that the Texans are going to throw the ball more efficiently next year, which is crazy to say considering what CJ Stroud was this year and what the offense looked like, especially compared to past years. Made me very happy as a Texans fan. But, there's all the buzz about them getting a running back and starting to finally have a run game, which is something that they didn't really have behind Damian Pierce. And they had a smidge of behind Devin Singletary, right? So I think it's going to be a lot more quality and over quantity like we saw this year. But I think either way, you're tied to what we've seen is, arguably the best rookie quarterback season in history, and they're not losing a lot offensively. They might lose Dalton Schultz to free agency. I don't think losing either of the running backs, whether that is Devin Singletary not coming back or Damian Pierce being buried or traded or whatever it may be, because he's still on his rookie contract, they're not losing a lot offensively. And we saw them be successful with just one of the receivers in Nico. We saw them be successful with both of the receivers. And I think that buying into the offense and buying into what's going on in Houston, I don't think there's necessarily a wrong answer. It's just which answer you feel is right.
That's fair. This to me, I feel like this is a slightly tough one because I think you can make a case for either side right now. With T. Higgins, it's like, he's going to be the number 2 for sure. Like there's no question about that. Jamar Chase is the wide receiver 1 on that team. Can Joe Burrow stay healthy for 17 games, every year? Can he stay healthy himself? He's dealt with injuries throughout his career on and off, not crazy, but here and there. And again, but there's that upside where, Seth talked about before, wide receivers that's had 2 guys over 1,000 yards. Well, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase has already done it once, and there's a good chance they could do it again in their lifetime. But then you look at the other side, Nico Collins. I liked him. I was a big fan of him. Finally got himself a quarterback. Do I believe Tank Dell is a future wide receiver 1 in this league? I don't know. Still, personally, I wasn't. He was a great speedster kind of guy. I don't know if he's someone who will be a future like the Amon St. Brown types or the CeeDee Lamb types, where he's a wide receiver 1 moving forward. Can Nico Collins do that? I don't know if he can do that either. But he had a great season. If he can continue that, he's going to probably get a contract extension. He's going to be with this Houston team that's young for a lot of years, hopefully. T. Higgins, he could still be traded. He could go somewhere. If he ends up in like Carolina, like that could kill his career, kind of. Maybe not. But in a general sense, I'm trying to get off topic too much here, but I think I'd lean Nico right now. But I think you can make a case either way for either one of these guys.
And I will say, going back to just Collins or Higgins, reports out of Houston are that Collins is ready to talk extension, and the feeling is mutual within Houston. So there's an obvious want to bring him back. With Higgins, there's a lot more. Is he going to get tagged and traded? Is he just going to get tagged and then might be unhappy playing under the franchise tag? Like, it's a lot more of, there's a possible emotion side to it from the player's point of view, where, Collins wants to come back and Houston wants him back, and it's a perfect marriage. And Higgins is, sitting there just twiddling his thumbs, waiting to get traded, or if he can be a free agent, or he's going to come back but be playing for less money than he wants. And so I think looking future-wise too, knowing the security of, or the supposed security of what the reports are telling us, Collins has his place a little bit more than I see Higgins having his place, just because there is kind of that rumor mill of what's going to happen to Higgins, as opposed to Collins is, for, if both sides can see it, going to spend the foreseeable future in Houston.
It's fair.
Yeah. Higgins is one of those guys you want to throw like a Google Calendar alert in for like next March. Be like, hey, where's he at? Because I want to know, I want to be ready for, because I think if he goes somewhere else and he's like ready to be like a wide receiver one on another team, like that's somebody that I could see him being the one on another team. He's just playing behind Chase right now, which most guys are gonna be the wide receiver two behind a guy like Chase, regardless of the talent level they have. And so it would have been nice to see Higgins go somewhere else, but he's definitely a guy I want to put a couple reminders in my Google Calendar. Hey, check in on Higgins and see if he still looks like that number one possible guy looking for a trade, because that to me could be huge.
Definitely. All right, let's get to our last slide of the night here. These are basically kind of players who just really haven't stepped up yet, still kind of young. Some of them are kind of young, most of them are kind of young, and just guys that who flashed. Some of them flashed, but really haven't done anything here. The Treylon Burks, the Khalil Shakirs, I like Pierce, Wanda Robinson, Jahan Dotson, Joshua Palmer, Jameson Williams. I don't know if we want to say Kadarius Toney at this point, or Tutu Atwell, even though he had a decent season, and Jerry Jeudy. Is there a wide receiver in this range here, guys, that you still believe in, Seth?
I think if there's anybody here that I would believe in to the point to really make moves for, it's Burks and Jameson Williams. And Jameson Williams to me is if I'm acquiring him, I'm acquiring him more as with the stock trading mindset of his values been depressed and people are going to expect it to go up. So if I can ride their expectation and get out of it, that's what I want to do. Last year I did research on wide receivers that missed significant amount of time their rookie year and their likelihood of ever becoming a fantasy relevant producer. For Williams to hit on his perceived value, he would have to be a historical outlier. And that to me is enough for me to be off of Jameson Williams. Even when people were like, well, how many people have been first round talents? There's been, I forget what my number is, but I went through and I broke down, here's your number one talents that have missed significant amount of time and what they've produced. And the outcome is still bad, whether or not you're looking at, the large sample size or the smaller sample size of just first round talents, the number is still bad. The historical outlook is still bad. Could he be that historical outlier? Sure. But most of the time, I'm going to try and insulate against betting on a historical outlier. And to me, that's where I would get Williams to try and move him. And then Burks is just the hope that somebody does something in that. And maybe it's Burks.
Maybe.
He had the name value, he had the hype, he had the expectation, but dear God, it's just another one of those offenses that you're like, goodness, can we move the ball? Can we score points? Did they forget that's what we're supposed to do on the offensive side of the football team is to score points and gain yardage? But yeah, those are my two guys. Other than that, all of these guys are, I don't know if they can still fit on your taxi squad. I don't know if they're how deep your roster is to keep a guy, that forgets what onsides means, like Tony or not. It's
some of these guys might be dropped this offseason.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot here that makes me oh man, I'm excited about this guy. And even a guy like Josh Palmer who put up decent fantasy weeks. You could drop him and wait, and Mike Williams might be on the move, but wait for another Mike Williams injury and be like, all right, I'll just scoop Palmer up off the waiver wire again and throw him in as my my second flex or something like that. There's no reason to be too excited. Maybe Dotson. Dotson was fun for a minute, but again, the Commanders are in a similar spot where it's we need somebody that can score points on that team, and it's tough. It's an offensive desert on some of these teams.
It sure is, unfortunately. Coach Tyler, what you got here?
Let me throw Dotson out. Just kind of, Same thing I said with Terry in terms of, there's a chance that things are looking up at the quarterback position. If they get someone, they get Drake May, and he's as advertised, and he's great. Jahan Dotson can be worth something. He can produce.
Yeah.
One guy, I'm going to go against the metrics and just go with coach speak here. There's an account on Twitter that I found that rates the validity of what coaches say and how often they tell the truth. Forget the name of it, but I saw it, and they were talking about Dan Campbell, and he's like a 90%, truth speaker as a coach. And with Jameson Williams, the metrics, he might be that outlier. He might not be. I'm not the numbers guy like that. I'm just the listen to the Mr. I like to bite kneecaps guy. But Jameson Williams, Jameson Williams, missed a lot of that rookie season coming off the destroyed knee, came back, and was just kind of like a gadget guy, just like, hey, we're going to try and throw you in, try and get you up to speed, not going to give you anything too quick. And then everyone was like, oh, sweet. He'll have a full off season to work. He'll come back. He'll be great. And then he decided to, throw some FanDuel bets down. Didn't really work out for him. Missed some games. But what we saw as he came back was sort of that slow implementation of him into the offense, right? It wasn't just, hey, get out here and go forward fast. But they were starting to draw up a couple sweeps and trying to use him as the deep threat that he is. And it was slowly becoming more and more and more. And as they were continuing to do that, Dan Campbell was making the point of, we're trying to get Jameson Williams more work. We believe in him. We trust him. We think that he can be part of the offense. And as we've gone into the offseason, he's saying the exact same thing about Jameson Williams, right? Going into next season, they want to use him more. They want to implement him more. They want to see Jameson Williams become a viable part of an offense that at one point had one explosive weapon and now has a flurry of them, right? So why not just add more to the arsenal? But he might be the only one here that I would like really take a shot on, just because, I love Dan Campbell and love what he says. And I trust that he is not a coach that's going to lie to the media or try and hide things, right? If he's saying that Jameson Williams is going to be a part of the offense and he trusts him, Jameson Williams is going to be a part of the offense and he trusts him, right? I don't know how far a part of that offense he's going to be, but, when a coach is valid and speaking to the media, you trust it. And so I'm going to take what he says, and I'm going to, if I have that last spot on my roster, I'm hold on to Jameson Williams. If not, I'm not really searching for him. If he's a throw in somewhere, if he's just ending up in my lap, I'm not going to say no, but he's not someone I'm actively chasing after. But Williams and Dotson are the two that have the ability to be someone that I would still believe in here.
Yeah, I agree. I think those two are clear guys that I still would love to see if their talent can kind of blossom in year 3 here. Some wide receivers do it later in life, unfortunately. So those are definitely two guys. Khalid Shakir, I don't know what Buffalo's going to do with that wide receiver 2 spot. I know that, they have a dual tight end system there now. Might not be as worthy, but, he looked good kind of at games down the stretch. Another guy that you could probably throw in if you're doing a trade, and if you say, give me someone else real quick, Alec Pierce, someone who was on the field the entire time playing on the Colts roster there. Gardner Minshew, he was an okay quarterback. It's the Anthony Richardson with that giant arm. Again, I'm not expecting the world out of him, but again, if you happen to have him in a trade, throw him in, like, okay, why not? Give him a shot. He's got 500 yards in back-to-back seasons now. I mean, he just needs a guy to get in the ball downfield, someone who has an ADOT that was really good last year. So that's another guy you could potentially go after that you can pretty much get for nothing. So, but that is going to wrap up our show tonight, guys. That was our wide receiver 2 revaluation part 2. Seth, man, you were a fantastic guest on the show. A lot of great insights. If there's anything you want to go ahead and mention, I'll give you the floor now, my friend.
Yeah, no, just hit me up on Twitter at FF the At Home Dad. Just put out a wide receiver and review piece from 2023. That's why, I got, if you see me looking up throughout the video, it's because I have all my graphics and little numbers and everything up there. I love kind of doing all that stuff. So hit me up on Twitter. And hope you enjoyed the show. And thanks, guys, for having me on. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Seth. Coach Tyler, anything you want to say before we get going?
Yeah, I got the Twitter right there at FF_TJ Hernandez. Y'all go follow me. Hit me up for any insights or anything. But, we didn't get through I don't think we got through our ad reads today.
No, I skipped them just because we were really long on time. I figured I'd wait until the end.
That was
well.
me.
I'll do our ad read. I'll do our ad read right now. Go check out Dynasty Nerds. Use code Coach.
Yes,
for a discount. When you register, like I talked about the Dynasty GM, you can see the strength and sometimes weakness of some teams in your league, in your team. And like we talked about, it's rookie season, right? Everyone's hype. All the picks are just at the highest value they can be before you're on the clock. We've got the all 22 film out there. We've got the film room. You can grind through and watch as much tape as you ever possibly could on every rookie that you want. We've got all kinds of articles coming out in the Devy area, just prepping you, all kinds of mock drafts and everything. So go check out the Dynasty Nerds. Go follow me on Twitter and use code Coach.
Yes, absolutely. And again, guys, thank you all for tuning in tonight. Great episodes here. Obviously, love talking Dynasty. If you guys are listening on our YouTube channel, we appreciate the subscription. You guys joined us tonight. If you did, we love that. If you listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we love that more. Please leave us a 5-star review. Continuing through this Dynasty talk here. We'll be back next week with quarterbacks, and then free agency is like 2 weeks away, guys. So we're going to have a lot of talk about that. It's going to be a lot of fun. So that's really about it. Again, guys, follow us over on Twitter at Coaches Fantasy. You can follow me at Coach Stephen P, guys. Until next time, guys, thanks for listening and have a good one.
Back to back is not far-fetched. We got a couple of Clark hands. I've been feeling super duper.